Hey y'all, it's Kendall. Welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in May. May was an interesting month for me. The first few days of May, I was finishing up my finals, and then my dad came to visit and he stayed with me for a while. So the month started out slow, but I'm on summer break right now, so I've been doing a lot of reading. We have a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. The first book that I read this month was actually the second in a series, so I'm just going to talk about the series as a whole. So this is the Paradise series, or the Winter in Paradise series by Elin Hilderbrand. I was taking finals at the beginning of May. I was looking for something fun, easy, and beachy to read, and I thought that these were perfect. They were pretty short. It was easy to keep up with. It had some romance, it had some mystery. I really enjoyed it. I gave the first book of the trilogy 4 stars. I gave the other 2 3 stars. And I would definitely say that the series as a whole kind of lies between a 3 and a 4. In the first book of the series, the main character, Irene, gets a phone call and she finds out that her husband has been found dead. He was in a helicopter crash off of St. John's Island. She's confused, she's shocked. She thought that he had been on a business trip, so why is he on an island? Why is he in a helicopter? You watch Irene and her 2 sons putting together the puzzle pieces, forming relationships, hanging out on the island. It was just fun. It was easy. I really enjoyed it. If you're looking for more of a beachy mystery and maybe you're not a big romance reader but you still want a summer beachy vibe, I think you should definitely check this one out. And if you're an Elin Hilderbrand reader and you're looking for something and you're going to wait to read this in the winter, honestly I think this is a better time to read it. Even though it's New Year's Eve when it starts, it has all of the great summer vibes and I really liked it. The second book that I finished this month was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. I really like her books. I read The Perfect Marriage by her when I was starting to get back into reading again, and I really enjoyed it. I think I've read almost all except for one of her books, so I was super excited for this to come out. It came out at the end of April, and I finally got my hands on it. So the main character in this book is Grace. She's trying to get away from her busy New York life, so she books an Airbnb in Wyoming. And it's one of the Airbnbs that is like a room in someone's house, not where you have like the whole property to yourself. The host's name of this Airbnb is Calvin. And immediately he's very kind, he's welcoming, but a little bit too kind and welcoming to the point where he's getting really creepy. It was fast-paced. It really hooked me from the start. I read this in like 2 sittings. I had to know what was gonna happen. I love a good thriller. She always does a good little plot twist. But okay, I will say, I know this is a fiction book, and I know that, you know, not real life, but the ending was a little bit too far-fetched for me. The plot twist was a little bit too out there for me, but I really enjoyed the book and was really looking forward to finding out what happens the whole time. I mean, I didn't want to put it down, so I still gave it 4 stars, but just be warned that the ending might not be what you want it to be or what you would think it would be. So the next book I read was Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I have so many thoughts on this book. If you gave this book to me like without a cover, without an author, like no information, I honestly don't think that I would have guessed it was an Emily Henry book. And not in a negative way. The writing was so beautiful. It was a really well-written book. Like as a piece of art, it was a 5-star book. But I went into it thinking, because of the title and because of the cover, I went in looking for a summery romance, and that's just not what the book was. And again, it was a really great book, but I think because of the place that I was at and what I was looking for, it didn't hit the way that I thought it was going to. So if you're going into this book, maybe be warned of that. I went in completely blind. I didn't want to read any reviews. I didn't want to watch any reading vlogs. And I do think that I might come back and reread this book at some time. And I would also say that if you're picking this book up, this is going to be not a slow read because it drags on, but I would recommend that you read it slowly because of how great the writing is. Like, you have to let it marinate a little bit. So when you pick this book up, just make sure you're in the mindset for a deep, emotional book. I wouldn't take this to the beach. You're not trying to lay out and feel the warmth of the sunshine. Like, I would pick this up on a rainy day. And maybe even if you're looking to cry a little bit. I ended up giving this book 4 stars, again, as a piece of art, and even the book itself was great. I did enjoy it, but it didn't give me the 5-star feeling, so 4 stars, but I think this would be a 5-star book for a lot of people. Now we're on to Never Lie by Freida McFadden. This was my first Freida McFadden book. I had only heard good things. I haven't read The Housemaid yet. I really want to. I was super excited to pick up one of her books. After Happy Place, I wanted a change of pace, so this is where we ended up. So this book is about a couple. They just got married. They're looking to buy a house, and they go to like a house viewing or showing, and it's during a big snowstorm, and they get snowed in and trapped in the house. It's just the two of them. This house originally belonged to a psychologist who vanished, disappeared a few years ago, and we don't know what happened to her. So while they're stuck in this house, hanging out, nothing else to do, the wife happens to come across this room where the psychologist she found had recorded all of her sessions with all of her clients, and so there's just this room full of cassette tapes with all of the client interviews and therapy sessions. It's very interesting to try to piece together, like, why are we hearing this specific client and who may or may not have been a part of the psychologist's disappearance. Of course, big plot twist at the end. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It was a great personal introduction to Freida McFadden. The next book I picked up was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've been trying to slowly go through and read all of her older books that I haven't read yet. I finally saw a TikTok that convinced me to pick this one up. So this one follows Ben and Elsie, who is a newly married couple. Very shortly after they get married, Ben is going out on his bike to grab some cereal from the store, and he's hit by a truck and passes away. The book is written in an alternating timeline. You're going back and forth between the present time, so Ben has passed, and you're watching Elsie grieve and connect with Ben's family and still trying to maintain relationships and friendships in her life after Ben's passing. And then you get the past story of how her and Ben met, falling in love, dating, engagement, marriage. I went into this hoping for a romance and thinking that I was getting a romance. This leans very heavily toward literary fiction. I would say the bulk of the book is more literary fiction, especially because all of the current timeline, I would say, is literary fiction, but you do get hints of the romance in the past timeline. Again, I like to go into a book pretty blind, but then sometimes this happens where I don't realize what I'm getting into. I did enjoy this book, even though it's not the genre that I thought I was going into or the storyline that I thought I was going to read. I did enjoy it, but there were just parts that kind of felt like it dragged on a little bit. And so I gave this a solid 3 stars. I enjoyed the past timeline a lot more than the present. The present was obviously pretty heavy, but it did have a good ending. I liked the story. If you like Taylor Jenkins Reid, I would still suggest picking this book up and giving it a try. Overall, solid 3 stars. Okay, next we have Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is a companion novel, I believe, to When in Rome. So not technically a series, you don't have to read When in Rome first, but I would highly suggest reading When in Rome first. That one really gets you familiar with the setting, the town, and then you have more of a connection to the side characters as well. When in Rome was a 5-star book for me, so I definitely went into this with high expectations, which I guess can sometimes be a bad thing. I still really enjoyed this book. Good, short, sweet romance. I love the small town. This book follows Annie and Will, who are characters from When in Rome, so you're now getting their story. I really liked them both as separate characters, as individuals, and as a couple. If you're looking for a closed-door romance, I think this is a really, really great option. And if you haven't read When in Rome, I definitely suggest reading that one because that one was a 5 stars. And if you liked When in Rome and haven't picked this one up, definitely should. I gave this one a solid 4 stars. Okay, next we have If He Had Been With Me. I finally picked it up. I'm sure you've seen millions of TikToks about it. I'd been wanting to read it for a really long time, and then I got scared because too many people were talking about it, and I was afraid of being let down. I was afraid it was being a little bit too hyped up. I do want to put, not a disclaimer, but a statement that this is, there's no mistaking that this is a young adult novel. So if you are not someone who likes a YA book, you would not like this at all. It's very young adult. The writing, the characters. I personally enjoy a young adult book, especially during the summer. I don't want to say too much about this book or about the plot, not only because I'm not sure what to say without giving it away, but also I'm sure that you've already seen so many things about it, so many TikToks, so many people crying and reacting to this book. I personally did not cry, but I was touched. It was sad. So I gave this a 4 stars, but I feel like it's a 4 stars with a little asterisk that it's 4 stars in the young adult world for me. Some young adult books really hold their own and it's like a solid 4 or 5 compared to all of the other books I've read. This one, I'm gonna put a young adult 4 stars. If you're looking for a sad story and you're looking for an easy read, this will do it. Moving back into another thriller, my next book was Want to Know a Secret by Freida McFadden. I loved Never Lie. I wanted to check out another Freida McFadden book. It's a thriller. It's nosy neighbors, rich neighborhoods, stay-at-home moms. I love that vibe in a thriller. Downloaded it immediately. Right off the bat, our main character is not the most likable. Really, most of the characters in this book are not the most likable because it's the snobby, rich, nosy moms. They're all in each other's business. You know the type. And honestly, I eat that up. But important to note that the other characters in the story, they're not liking our main character, and the main character doesn't really like anyone else either. So she starts getting text messages to her phone from an anonymous number, and somehow this anonymous messenger knows things about her life, knows secrets, knows where she is, they can see her, she cannot figure out what's going on. Terrible things are happening to her. I was immediately into this book. I did not want to put it down. The entire first half of the book, reading. And again, I'm aware that these are fiction books, but this one, I could not get over the ending. I could not get over the plot twist. And I'm not meaning this in a oh my gosh, blow my mind way. I'm meaning this in it really bothered me. It really upset me. Not to the point where I wish I hadn't read the book, but to the point where it brought it down. It brought it down a star. I gave this one 3 stars. It honestly angered me. If you've read it, I would love to chat on that. I just don't really have any further comments. I don't know what to say. I was just so excited at the beginning. I was loving the setting. The characters were interesting to me. I love the wealthy people thriller. And this one just didn't do it for me. Solid 3 stars. I think some people would really love it. Moving on. I really went back and forth with the moods this month, so after finishing the thriller, I went back to young adult, beachy, romance. So the next book I read was Never Vacation with Your Ex. I just simply am not passionate about this book one way or the other. I enjoyed it while I was reading it, and it was fine. I didn't want to put it down. I was enjoying it. It was silly. It was family vacation. You're in California. I can't remember the main characters' names, but you have the female main character and the male main character. Their families vacation together every year. They had recently broken up and they have to come back together and hang out during this family vacation, right? It was good at the time, and then it was over. I don't think it's anything that I'll really be thinking about again. I think there's a lot of other summer beachy books that I would suggest before you pick this one up. It's a second chance romance. If that's something that really gets you, then maybe you should still check it out. This was just a solid 3 stars for me. It was fine enough. After Never Vacation with Your Ex, it didn't hit the way I wanted it to. I was still on the look for the summer beachy romance vibes, so I picked up Meet Me by the Lake by Carly Fortune. I loved Every Summer After. Still think about it. That's one of the books that I can still picture very vividly in my head. I was so excited to read this. And spoiler alert, I gave this 3 stars. And this is my 3rd book in a row this month that just back to back to back, I'd given it 3 stars and it was fine. And at this point I was kind of afraid that I was gonna get into a book slump because nothing was hitting the way that I wanted to. This book is an alternating timeline. Usually I love. So you go back and forth from the present and the past when our characters Fern and Will met. So 9 or 10 years ago, they had spent this one day together. It was the first day they met. It was this magical connection, and I did really enjoy the timeline of them all those years ago. I liked reading that story, and the chapters in the past really pushed me through the book. But I was not convinced that they were soulmates. I was not convinced that they needed to get back together. I was not feeling the connection in the present timeline. If there was a reason that I wanted them to get together, it was honestly because I wasn't going to DNF the book, but I was kind of ready for it to be over. And I was like, okay, well, once they get together, then we're one step closer to the book being done, I guess. Their relationship was just lacking something. It was lacking some spark. I was not convinced. There was just no reason for me to really truly root for them. I did not deeply believe that they actually needed to be together. 3 stars. Moving on. Finally, I had a winner. My next book, Rock Bottom Girl by Lucy Score. I was a little bit afraid of picking this one up because I was already fearing the slump, and this book was almost or possibly, it was around 500 pages, right? But let me tell you, I read this in 2 days. I really liked it. I totally recommend. I ended up giving this 4 stars. But this book is about Marley and Jake. Marley's 38. She's out of a job. She's back in her childhood bedroom, and she ends up getting a job at her old high school, and she's coaching the girls' soccer team and teaching there. Of course, you find out that one of the guys' soccer coaches is Jake. Back in high school, they had not had a relationship, but, they'd had a thing. There was a connection that never really happened, right? So I guess you could classify this as slightly a second chance romance, but the main thing is we're fake dating. It was so good. I loved it. I was convinced that they needed to be together, and these characters felt so real. These were real people to me. I mean, it's still a fiction book, so I can't say it was the most realistic story in the world, but the characters felt real, and something huge for me was that the 3rd act breakup did not bother me. It was like, it was reasonable. I was like, okay, I'm understanding this. Like, Marley is a real person. This is how she's feeling. This would happen in the real world. I'm usually so pissed off by the third act breakup. And this one just was like, yeah, this needed to happen. And honestly, I wasn't ready for the book to be done. Let them break up a second time. I'll watch them get back together again. I think you should absolutely pick this book up. I don't know what else to say about it. We've gotten to the point in the month where I read Kyland by Mia Sheridan. Honestly, I don't want to talk much about this book because something about it did not sit well with me. It did not sit right, it did not sit well. I don't know what to say. I'm a little bit afraid to say anything. I went back and forth for a little bit. Was it 2 stars? Was it 3 stars? I don't really do the decimal point ratings. I stick to the Goodreads rating scale. It's just a little bit easier for me. After it marinated for a little bit, I did eventually land on 3 stars. But it seemed like a weird rating because I did enjoy parts of the book. And I would never say that this was a bad book, and honestly, I think there's a lot of people that would really like it. I don't really want to say much about it, so if you're wondering, go read the back of the book. If it intrigues you, then I think you should pick it up. But if it's not something that's really calling your name, I don't think you're missing out. And again, if you have read it, I would love to chit-chat on this because I don't have anyone to talk about this book with, and I need to know if I'm the only one with these feelings on this book. Call me. I went out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I read Legends and Lattes. I'd heard nothing but good things about this book. I was in line for this book at the library for weeks, possibly multiple months. So people are obviously wanting to read this book. I believe that this is categorized as a cozy fantasy. I could be wrong on that. Not positive. Spoiler alert, this was 2 stars for me. Every time I picked it up, I fell asleep. I don't even think this was that long of a book. I'm not sure. I read it on my Kindle, and honestly, I didn't look to see how many pages it was, but I'm pretty sure on the timestamp where it shows you how long is left in the book, pretty sure the entire book, it said it was going to take me around 3 hours. I should have finished that in a day, and it took me almost a week. I'm not lying when I tell you I fell asleep almost immediately every time I started reading the book. One of my big issues with the fantasy genre, and one of the reasons I don't read a lot of fantasy, is because I hate picking up a book where the first half is world building and description. But then one of my issues with this book was that there was 0 world building or description. I could not picture these characters or this world if I tried. And maybe there was description and I was half asleep through it, but I really don't think that there was. It was cozy, that's for sure. It felt like an adult bedtime story. I'm not meaning that in a negative way. Honestly, it was kind of enjoyable to pick it up before bed and know that I was going to fall asleep pretty quickly, but I enjoy my nightly reading time, and I was getting a little bit too much sleep that week. I don't want to say that I don't recommend it, because it wasn't bad, but it was not for me. So, on the enjoyment scale, I could not give it more than a 2 stars. Nothing against the people that like this book, because I can absolutely understand why you would like it. It was cozy, it was heartwarming. I could see how you'd be smiling while reading it. I just personally was not. Moving along, we have The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. I love a Christina Lauren book. They don't miss. I haven't read all of them, but anytime I pick one up, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be quick and easy. It's gonna be fun. I have nothing bad to say about them. Fizzy is the main character in this book. She's an author, she writes romance, she's single, and she's going on a reality TV show. She's gonna date a bunch of men, It's gonna be a good time. This book is also set in the same world as The Soulmate Equation, which I really loved. And if you haven't read that one, I think you should read it first. You've got some return characters. So in The Soulmate Equation, they have the genetic ally, the testing that will show you your compatibility with someone, give you a love match, and that's also a part of this book and a part of the reality TV show. So at the finale, you're going to find out who the audience has voted her to be with, and you're going to find out who her real love match is based on their DNA testing. Absolutely no surprise to anyone, Fizzy ends up forming a connection with someone who she very much should not be forming a connection with while she's the lead on this reality dating show. It was fun. It was funny. Very specifically, Fizzy was not too quirky. She was a little bit of a quirky main character, but mild. She was a mild quirky. She was not falling, she was not tripping, she's not spilling drinks, but she's funny. I really liked her. I am not really one to laugh during a book, laugh out loud. I did not laugh out loud during this book, but it got me pretty close. This was probably the closest I've gotten. I had a lot of the air out of the nose moments. I really liked it. I thought it was a good time. I'm not sure if I already said it, but I gave this book 4 stars. It was sweet, it was fun, it was a good time, and I definitely recommend picking it up. This brings us to our last book, which I just finished this morning. And big surprise, I do actually have the physical copy. So I finished The Summer Place, and I will not be attempting to say this author's name. You can read that for yourself. Anyway, I'm having a little bit of a hard time gathering my thoughts on this book. I don't think I need to let it marinate too much rating-wise. I'm very confident that this is a 3 stars for me. I'm pretty sure most of the books this month were a 3-star for me. Not sure if it was my mood, the book choices. I'm gonna say it was the book choices. Be warned. This is not a beach read. This is not a summer book. I do not recommend reading this by the pool. Very misleading title, very misleading cover. Again, so many books this month I picked up looking for that summer beach read. And not that they weren't good. I still very much enjoyed most of them. This one was very different than I thought it was gonna be. The last third of this book is set on Cape Cod, so I will give it that. There are beachy scenes, but the majority of this book is flashbacks and putting together the stories of a variety of characters, and those are definitely not in beachy settings. The back of this book basically will tell you that the main characters of this story, or the main storyline, is Ruby and Gabe. They started dating, the pandemic happened, and it really quickly sped up the timeline of their relationship. They've announced that they're engaged, and they're announced that they're getting married very quickly, and the wedding is going to be on Cape Cod. You immediately know that Ruby's stepmother is not happy about this. She does not think they've been dating long enough. A lot of people in the family are just not feeling this wedding for reasons that we don't know yet. Getting into this book was quite difficult. There were so many characters. Each chapter is on a different character, and it didn't feel like there was a home base. It never felt like there was a main character or really a main storyline. The wedding and Ruby and Gabe, it is the main storyline, and it goes back to that at the end. That made it a little bit hard to get into. But then, once I was in, there were so many secrets being revealed. You finally feel like you're getting to know some of the characters. You're trying to figure out how all of this is intertwined. There are a lot of stories, and this book is in 3 parts. So part 1, I'm getting into it. I was a little bit disconnected. Part 2, I had finally felt like I figured out all of the names and relations of the characters. Lots of Secrets, Part 2 I sped through. Then you get into Part 3, and I'm like, oh my gosh, when is all of this gonna blow up? When are these secrets gonna come out? What's gonna happen? And we're finally getting the beachy setting. I'm into the book at this point. So I'm hooked. And then I realize there's like 50 pages left, and it feels like nothing has happened. Things have happened because of all of these past timelines, but it felt like nothing had happened in the present. Like I was waiting so long for something crazy to happen, or for someone's secret to get out, for someone to find out something. And then the book just kind of ended. So I'm a little bit mixed on this, because I did enjoy the majority of the book, but then it just kind of ended. And I don't really know what genre this would be either. I'm gonna say I think it's literary fiction. All in all, it was 3 stars. I don't think that it'll be something that I come back and I think about. And honestly, I am just feeling very lied to when it comes to the cover and title of this book. Again, not what I was looking for. Apparently that's a theme this month. Maybe I should start reading the backs of the books. It's just not as fun that way sometimes. I want to be surprised. So that was the last book that I read this month. I hope you enjoyed. I'm super excited to get into June. I have a lot of hopefully great books on my TBR. If you have any book recommendations that you think could be the beachy summer book that I'm looking for, please let me know. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Bye!